Hi, this is Lisa Brandel from Three Strands Freedom Ministry, and I'm here talking to Father Larry Gearhart today. This is our New Testimony Tuesday segment, and I have chosen him to be my first of many victims. Father Larry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine for a victim.
Well, if you could do me a favor and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
hmm Well, let's see. I'm white male, mostly Anglo-Saxon.
Gosh. Okay, it's going to go that way. It's going to go that way. Everybody turn their heads. I'm about to slap the priest. Okay, tell me about your educational background.
Oh, okay. Well, I got interested in mathematics at a somewhat young age. I was in 8th grade, and I read a book called Fun with Mathematics that actually delved into how the number pi is calculated. And I had this crazy notion when I took the test to the entrance exam for the high school entry class, freshman class. I got this crazy idea that I could solve a problem that was on the test. What is the volume of a sphere?
Mhm.
And it turned out I couldn't, but I kept working on it.
Well, then you have some fortitude and moxie, because when I came across that very similar test, I went, I don't care.
hmm
So, Father Larry and I have known each other for quite a few years. He was the pastor at the church that I converted at, and I've had the fortune or misfortune, depending on the time of day,
Right.
of getting to know him rather well. Father Lear, tell us a little bit about how you grew up religiously.
Oh, that's a long story. The beginning, pretty much, is when my parents separated when I was 4. My brother John was on the way. And so my mother moved in with my grandparents, and they were very devout Catholics. My grandfather was a French Canadian. My grandmother was Irish from Rhode Island, and they were really devout people. Grandpa was a member of the Holy Name Society, and I remember not too much longer after that, participating in Block Rosary. See, this is not that long after World War II ended. And my oldest uncle on that side of the family was a Japanese OW.
So he was a Jesuit priest.
Uh, and he was a Jesuit priest. Yeah, you want to shorten this, right? Yeah. He
No,
was.
I just you. No, yeah, I'm tired of you talking already. No, it had a glitch. The computer had a glitch here for a second. We're already sick of your voice. I'm losing subscribers as we speak. Hemorrhaging.
Uh-oh.
So don't continue, please.
Okay, right. Um, yeah, so I really admired my Uncle Ben. Very smart guy. And pretty much everybody in the family loved Uncle Ben. And I thought that was awesome. That really impressed me. And pretty much everybody admired Aunt Madonna too. She was 3 years older, and she was a nun. She was a member of the Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, known as BBMs.
So your background is very religious. I mean, very.
Very religious. Yes,
Yeah.
right.
We're
Now
not
you got
talking
it.
nominal. We're talking very.
Very religious. Yes.
So you religion came easy to you?
Well, let's just say I was really into it when I was a youngster.
Mm. Did that carry
Um,
through? Did that carry through your whole life?
no, there was a stumbling block along the way.
Uh-oh.
Actually, there were two stumbling blocks. One was a moral one was an intellectual one.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the moral one was basically related to my becoming a teenager. And one of my classmates in school um, introduced me to masturbation.
Oh, so that was a little
That was the little moral stumbling block. I
okay.
was not aware at the time that it was a problem, but I found out soon enough.
Okay. Um, and the intellectual problem?
Yeah, the intellectual problem didn't occur until I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
And
What
I was,
what was that?
well, I was in college prep English and college prep science. I was taking, in my senior year, I was taking one semester in semi-micro qualitative analysis, which was chemistry. And the second semester was physics. I was introduced to um, Einstein. Well, initially, I was introduced to um, Newton's laws of gravity. And I believe there was some discussion of quantum physics too and relativity theory, but we didn't go into that in any depth. Um, the combination of what I was exposed to in college prep English and physics was devastating because in college prep English, we studied Milton's Paradise Lost.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a profound passage in there where Lucifer describes how he came to rebel against God.
Okay.
And I pondered, how could anybody make that kind of a judgment? How could anybody make that kind of a decision? And so I began to think about decisions, how we make judgments. And in the physics class, my understanding was very simplistic. This Newtonian picture of the world led me to understand or think I understood that there couldn't possibly be anything such as free will because the laws of physics were determinate.
Okay.
Well, even if you add indeterminacy like you would naturally from quantum mechanics, you still don't get there. But it turns out that quantum mechanics is a lot more subtle than I had any grasp of at that time.
Oh yeah.
So I came to the conclusion that free will is impossible.
And that's huge because in the Catholic Church, correct me if I'm wrong, and you will, I know you will, um, free will is huge in the Catholic Church. Part of the entire, linchpin of the church is whether you can make the decisions to Jesus, to cooperate with grace, to go against grace, because without, if you don't have the decision, then you can't sin, really, can you?
No, you really can't. No, if you're simply a robot, one of God's robots, which is kind of a perspective that John Calvin had.
Mhm.
You know, Calvinism taught pretty much the same thing, that there is no such thing as free will. We're predetermined to go to heaven or hell. And that's kind of convenient because then there's no purgatory.
Well, and then I was thinking with the moral issue that you had previously, and this rolled into that, that kind of took the guilt off of your plate, didn't it? Because you, it kind of
Precisely.
justified whatever you did. Whatever you did was fine, because you didn't have any free will, and it was
Precisely. Precisely.
so it kind of was like this could have stopped earlier, but it ran into this heresy basically, and covered it over so that it smoothed you right into what, non-belief, atheism, agnosticism.
Yeah, what, yeah, yeah. I understood enough about philosophy not to become an atheist. I had no confidence that I could prove that God didn't exist. So I took the agnostic position.
Okay.
I wasn't sure that he existed. And I didn't know where to look to make a decision about that.
Wow. I mean, having not grown up in a spiritual household, I've often thought, I think wrongly, that had I had the ability to grow up in a specific religion, it would have made my life so much easier. But what I'm hearing you say is that it didn't really make your life easier, because this other thing kind of overlapped what everybody else was saying.
Right. Part of the problem, I think, that still remains is that Catholic catechesis didn't take you very far. And
Not
that's true, I believe, in Catholic schools, Catholic high schools even, and probably even in Catholic colleges. Catholic catechesis doesn't take you through challenges of that nature.
we you and I've talked about that before. We get wrapped up in the procedure and not enough about the content.
Right.
Okay. So this is obviously, spoiler alert for our viewers. I mean, you are a priest and you're wearing your collar. So spoiler alert, that did
Mm.
not, your agnosticism didn't last forever. Can you tell me a little bit about what changed your mind? And I know our audience doesn't know, but you are very hard-headed, so I can't imagine what could have changed your mind. Tell me about it.
Well, maybe I should give a little story about how hard-headed I am.
Do we have enough tape for this? Go ahead.
um, I can't remember whether it was second or third grade. Um, the teacher, who was a nun, of course, I was in a Catholic school. The teacher decided that she was going to have all of her students one by one get up and sing.
Mm,
And I've always been an introvert. I'm still an introvert.
I know that about.
Maybe you can't tell that, but I'm an introvert.
I knew that.
um, and I was too shy to get up. I was too shy to get up in front of all those kids. There were like 60 kids in the class. They had big classes in those days. Um, they're like unheard of numbers today in Catholic schools, especially. And the whole thought of getting up and singing to all those other kids was, I found that intimidating.
Mhm.
And
I think a lot of people.
so I told the teacher I couldn't do it. And she was very upset with me. If you know anything about Catholic schools, there was something called the cloak room in the back of class where everybody hung up their cloaks. And basically, it was a big, long, um, or maybe I should say a big, wide closet. You
Mhm.
know, it stretched from one side of the classroom to the other, and it had these revolving doors. And it took me back there, and in order to have privacy, she decided to tell me that I had to do it, whether I wanted to or not. But before she told me that, she said, if you were as holy as you are stubborn, you would be a saint. So, so apparently I impressed this teacher with my stubbornness.
And I stand in the gap and say that that's still true.
Well, we have had our disagreements about things, yes. Um, and her statement really touched me, and I broke down and cried. And I decided she's probably right. And so I went out and tearfully, I sang from whatever it was I sang at the time in front of all those kids. And so there was something more powerful to me than being intimidated by 60 kids, and that was disappointing God. Um,
That's pretty intense.
well, for a kid, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Um, I've since lost that fear of singing to an audience, but I still have I don't have a presence like somebody that would be more extrovert would have when they're singing to a group.
Mm.
You know, if you're extrovert and you're in front of a group and you're entertaining people, it feels a lot more natural than it would for an introvert. Um, I have since developed in that area though, because I feel natural presiding at mass and giving a homily and,
Well,
and telling jokes.
grace is real.
Exactly.
Grace,
Exactly.
very real.
It's very real.
So you went from not wanting to disappoint God to being introduced to this moral dilemma, then an intellectual dilemma, and then you slipped into being agnostic. How long were you agnostic?
For 20 years.
Oh, wow.
From
And
age, from about eight, I mean, I didn't actually make the decision to call myself an agnostic until I was 18. And it wasn't until I was 38 that I had my conversion experience.
tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's really kind of curious. What led up to it is I became fascinated with New Age and all of these crazy ideas about out of body experiences, things like that. Um, there was a well-known actress whose name escapes me at the moment.
Shirley MacLaine.
Shirley MacLaine, thank you. Um, who wrote a book, um, and the title of that escapes me too, but um, something about dancing in the light or something really, you know, kind of new agey sounding. Um, anyway, I was somewhat impressed with that book, and so I actually experimented with out of body experience. I didn't get anywhere, you know. It turns out I have a built-in skepticism for things like that, but I like to experiment, and not getting anywhere. I felt, well, apparently it's just not true, or I didn't know what I thought at the time. I was just kind of confused mentally. Um, and I went to bed one night and I had an experience of God showing me what my life would be like if I continued the way I was. And towards the end, he mentioned to me that if I didn't change, a lot of people could lose their immortal souls to perdition.
Wow.
And I don't I still don't have a notion of how many that is. But I believed it at the time. I mean, from what I could tell, it was coming from God. It was coming from um, an entity that had knew exactly who I was, knew exactly what was going on in my life, could show me what would happen in the future. Um, and at the very end of that experience, which I had while I was still sleeping, um, God showed me what it would be like to be without him for all eternity.
So he showed you how.
Yeah, it's kind of the spiritual equivalent of slapping me about and waking me up.
I would say
Wake
God,
up, kid.
God said, "You want an out of body experience, kid? Let me show you what's going to happen if you leave your body right now."
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah, right. So I was so overwhelmed by that experience. I woke up and I was sobbing, and I fell on my knees and begged forgiveness.
Wow.
That was kind of the turning point. But since I'm such a skeptic, I didn't lose being a skeptic. Um, I wondered, what does that mean for me? I wasn't convinced at that moment that I needed to go back to the Catholic Church. In fact, I wondered, who is this? Who is God? Has he ever spoken to human beings before, and who did he speak to? Um, and very shortly after that experience, I came across a magazine article, and I forget precisely what the question addressed was. It was either who is God or what is God, and it was a series of articles by um, authorities in different faiths who had their own ideas about who God is. The one that really impressed me the most was written by a Jewish rabbi. I think it was a Jewish rabbi, and he wrote about Moses' encounter with God in the wilderness at the burning bush. And that impressed me for two reasons. One is it appealed to my fascination with physics because the burning bush was a contradiction of the second law of thermodynamics. It
It was
was a
not
bush.
consumed.
It was a bush that would burn but not be consumed exactly, and it impressed the heck out of Moses.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Moses approached because he was impressed too, big time impressed. And to make a long story short, when Moses asked God who he was, what name does he give him when he goes to speak to his people about that? God said in Hebrew, it's Ayeh Asher Ayeh, literally meaning, I am that I am. In the typical translation, it's I am who am. And that's how it was translated in this article. And when I thought about that, what it really meant, it deeply, deeply impressed me in terms of philosophy, in terms of this whole idea of existence. God was saying that he is the one who exists and doesn't depend upon anything or anybody else for existence. He is the source of existence. And that's a lot more profound, a lot deeper than you find in any other ancient religion.
Mhm.
So it really touched me because I recognized that Moses, who was living in the Bronze Age,
Mm-hmm.
a very ancient, primitive culture, this is even before iron was used to make swords. It so impressed me that I decided this has to be the real thing. This is no joke. And so I began to read scripture. Um, that set me on a path. And I'd already been reading scripture from time to time because people would throw things my way. And I would see, there's some fascinating stuff here. But this really changed things around. And I began to relate directly to God. And in the process, God gave me a number of deja vu experiences. Um, if you know what the term means, deja vu basically means already seen.
Mm-hmm.
I had dreams about things that would, happen to me in the future. And I don't know exactly how that, how or why that was taking place, but I think it was kind of a residual of my experience in that dream.
You changed paths. You
I
did,
has.
yeah, you did exactly what you believed you could not have done, and that is you made a choice. You changed paths from where you had been on the trajectory to this new
Right, right.
thing. Well,
Right,
new
right.
old thing.
Right. And then the experience led me to appreciate that free will really does exist, even if I couldn't understand it at the time. It made no sense to me that God would give me that experience unless free will actually existed.
And yeah, unless you could make a decision. If you couldn't make a decision, then there's no visual or vision that he could have given you to change your mind. Because
Well, yeah, I mean, all you would have to do is scramble my brain a different way, without any kind of experience, without any kind of a choice. And all of a sudden, bingo, I would be Afghan or
that
whatever he wanted me to be.
but that's not how it is.
But of course, that's not how God treats us.
No, he's not the divine computer programmer. He's the divine father, the love. You know,
Exactly.
love
Exactly.
love is not an abusive relationship where you have no choice,
Right.
where it's not love.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, and now you're a priest.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. And I, I wanted your testimony because I know a lot of very intelligent people, and some of them are struggling right now with the whole concept of free will as well. Um, your testimony has always touched me very profoundly, and I wanted to share that with the world, and it will live long after you're gone and long after I'm gone now, because it's out there in the world. God will take it wherever He goes with it. So
Precisely.
yeah, and I can't control that, but I can definitely be obedient in it.
I can't either. I can't either, but that's okay with me.
Yeah. To wrap this up, um, could you say give one bit of either advice or some truism that you know about God, or to anybody out there that's listening?
Um, the advice I would give is that the relationship of humanity to God is a lot more profound than you have any notion of. Um, God is respectful even of his own creation. And so he allows us to stew on our own juices. He did that with me.
You
And
were
so,
you were essentially a little boy in the corner who put himself in the corner, and God let you sit there until he thought your lesson was learned.
to simplify things a little, yes, right, right,
I mean, that is pretty profoundly simple, but that's essentially what happened.
right. He let me go my own way,
Mhm.
and I got into one problem after another. And all those experiences um, deepened my humility. You can imagine that I had an outsized ego, having all of these intellectual abilities, and I needed to be humbled. It was essential in my spiritual development.
In all seriousness, I completely see that. And in joking, I'm waiting for it to happen. I'm waiting for your humbleness to happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. I want to thank you, Father Larry, for joining us today. Um, Father Larry can be found if you Google Father Larry Gearhart. Uh, take a few seconds and tell them about your blog, and then I will let them go.
Well, actually, I've got a couple of blogs and I have a wiki.
He has his own wiki. Nerd alert.
Nerd alert, nerd alert. Yeah. Um, in fact, I use blogging software instead of going to like the Google
Blogger.
blogger, yeah, blogger, or some other you know home for blogs. I've got my own blog sites.
Okay.
The first one I came up with is called eyesoffaith.info,
Okay.
and it explores a lot of the things that I discovered in my life, and it also has a lot of commentary on what was going on in society, politics, things like that. The second site that I came up with much more recently is called
Okay.
CatholicConservative.org.
See.
And it explores Catholic social teaching and what is it about the Catholic faith that would um, give some meat to the conservative perspective. The wiki is called um, the Postmodern Dictionary.org.
All right. Well, we will make sure that we have links to all of those in the comments or in the description below in this video. And on that note,
Yeah, I don't. Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, you froze for a second there. I didn't know what was gonna happen there. Anyway, yeah. Now, what were we going to wind up with?
That was it. Just a little bit of any advice for anybody out there um, seeking to understand or seeking God or against God or anything. Do you have any advice?
We'll take the possibility of his existence seriously, and ask yourself, what meaning does life have if there is no God? If this is all just random stuff, what meaning and purpose does life have? And think about that. And then think about, why would God create us? What possible interest could God have in creating a universe with human beings and animals and plants and all kinds of stuff? What possible interest could God have? God being an infinite being with infinite knowledge, understanding, etc., etc. What possible interest could God have in all that? And you have two of the biggest questions that human beings have ever asked. And you try to resolve those two questions. And eventually, I think, if you really are serious about those questions, you will be deeply impressed by Judeo-Christian experience.
Wonderful. That has been our time. And I want to thank you, Father Larry, for hopping on this Zoom meeting and giving your testimony. I'll put the link to all of Father Larry's stuff in the description below. And we will see you next Tuesday with another testimony to God's glory and greatness. Thank you for joining us. Have a good one.